Number 10. Kentucky Ghost Ship. There's a creepy old ship rotting in the middle of nowhere, USA. It began life over 100 years ago as a luxury yacht used by an unknown wealthy owner. Throughout the years, the yacht ended up having many different names and being used as many different types of ships. It was used by rich people for yachting, it was drafted for anti-submarine duty during World War I, and she even helped the famous inventor Thomas Edison to do experimental work. After the war, when she was known as the USS Sachem, the ship turned into a fishing boat, and then much later, it began work in the tourism sector by ferrying tourists through the New York harbors. But after such an exciting life, the many-named ship came to a sad and miserable end. It was purchased by an unknown person in Kentucky for just $7,500. This was about 30 years ago, so it was quite a bargain of a deal, even back then. Unfortunately, when the ship sailed west to Kentucky, for whatever reason, it wound up abandoned in a creek near the Ohio River. It's been there for at least 3 decades, with some stumbling upon the rusted wreckage every now and again. It's come a long way, but there's really no salvaging it at this point. There are trees growing through its hull, it's completely gutted, and it's beached on a random creek shore hours away from civilization. Number 9. The H.M.S. Terror. The H.M.S. Terror is by far the most spectacular lost ship ever to be found. It was one of 2 ships under the leadership of Sir John Franklin back in 1845. They were part of an expedition to discover the Northwest Passage. Instead, all they discovered was horror, hence the name of the ship. The H.M.S. Terror and its sister ship, the H.M.S. Erebus, got stranded in the Arctic ice. The crews tried to escape and ended up resorting to cannibalism, and sadly, none of them made it out alive. For 170 years, the HMS Terror remained frozen in a block of ice. It wasn't until 2016 that archaeologists found the lost vessel and began studying it. According to Parks Canada, archaeologists used remotely operated vehicles to look through the interior of the historic vessel. The lead archaeologist on the project, Ryan Harris, says the ship is amazingly intact. The underwater archaeologists were able to explore 20 cabins and compartments, finding the ship in the exact same condition it had been in when it was abandoned by the crew. Glasses were still sitting on the shelves, beds were made, there were scientific instruments waiting to be used, and there were even charts and journals spread across tables. Number 8. The Griffin. The wreckage of a ship that suffered a curse over 350 years ago has finally been found. The ship was called the Griffin, and it vanished during its maiden voyage in the year 1679. Shipwreck hunters have been looking for it for centuries. The Griffin was originally constructed for a French explorer who was planning to find a route through the American Great Lakes to China. This is obviously impossible, but they didn't know that back then. The ship was in the middle of delivering a cargo of furs when the crew got into some trouble with an Iroquois tribe. A shaman from the tribe allegedly cursed the ship, and before it could deliver its cargo, it went missing. The ship was finally found by Steve and Kathy Libert, at least so they claim. They haven't been able to identify the ship with 100% certainty, but they did find a colonial-aged shipwreck sitting at the bottom of Lake Michigan, near Poverty Island. It matches the description of the Griffin, though there's honestly not much left of it anymore. The entire ship has rotted, with only the bones of its wooden hull still intact. As for how the ship sank, we still don't know. Some historians believe it was taken down during a violent storm. Others say the Iroquois tribe didn't actually curse the vessel, but instead boarded the ship, killed the crew, and then set the thing on fire. What do you think caused this ship to sink? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. The SS COTOPAXI. A lost ship called the SS COTOPAXI has been discovered after vanishing near the Bermuda Triangle almost a century ago. It happened on November 29, 1925. The SS COTOPAXI left Charleston, South Carolina with a crew of 32 men. It was on its way to Havana, Cuba. However, the ship never got there. As it neared the Bermuda Triangle, it vanished without a trace. This was one of the original disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle that sparked rumors of paranormal activity. There have been ghost stories, tales of aliens abducting the ship, and all kinds of nonsense going on for 95 years. But finally, in 2020, a team of shipwreck hunters identified the remains of the boat. The ship was discovered in a place called Bear Wreck, which is infamous for containing sunken vessels. It's kind of a marine graveyard. The team of marine biologists were able to locate the exact place where the ship sank by using court records and insurance paperwork from 1925. While sifting through all this paperwork, they discovered that the boat was under financial pressure at the time. This means it probably left port without the equipment it needed to get through a tropical storm. When it encountered bad weather, the ship went down. It wasn't aliens or ghosts, it was just poor planning and Mother Nature. Number 6. Ancient military vessel. divers have uncovered a mysterious ancient military vessel submerged off the coast of Alexandria in Egypt. The ship was once docked at the port of Tanis Heraklion, one of the greatest Mediterranean cities in ancient times. Today, the city is entirely submerged. It's under dozens of feet of water in the Egyptian Bay of Abu Qir. According to the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, the ship had been docked beside the megalithic Temple of Amun when disaster struck in the year 331 BC. The ship was 80 feet, 24 meters long, probably a fearsome military vessel used to guard the bay. But without warning, a great earthquake shook the city, causing this temple to break and collapse sideways. This thing was so big that when it collapsed, it took out the military ship with huge chunks of falling stone. At the same time that the ship was being broken into pieces by the collapsing temple, the earthquake caused a tsunami to breach the shoreline and pull the entire city into the water. It was just as catastrophic as when the volcano erupted and destroyed the Italian city of Pompeii. Within just minutes, the city of Tanis Heraklion was underwater. Archaeologists uncovered this sunken port city a few decades ago, but it wasn't until recently that they found the bones of the military ship. It was found under about 16 feet, 4.8 meters of hardened clay, with massive blocks of stone still pinning it to the seabed. Number 5. The H.L. HUNLEY submarine. The H.L. HUNLEY was a submarine for the Confederate States of America that battled during the American Civil War. It was the first combat submarine in history to ever sink a fully equipped warship, the USS Housatonic. But it was this historic success that resulted in the sinking of the H.L. HUNLEY. It wasn't the warship that did it in, but rather the fact that when the submarine tried to flee the scene, it got lost and sank before the crew could ever get it back to base. But believe it or not, the ship actually sank 3 times during its short career. The submarine was built in Alabama, with its first sailing in 1863. Its first sinking was on August 29th the same year. 5 members were killed, but the submarine was salvaged. Then in October of that same year, 8 crew members were killed and the ship sank yet again. It was recovered a second time and then sunk a third time after destroying the USS Housatonic. The third time, it was lost for good. The ship wasn't found again until 1995. One of the biggest problems with locating the ship was that nobody knew where it went under. The crew had gotten lost and were unable to send any kind of coordinates to base. 5 years after the H.L. HUNLEY was found, it was raised from its watery grave and put on display at the Warren Lash Conservation Center in South Carolina. Number 4. The Murmansk. The Murmansk was once a devastating Soviet cruiser that functioned during the Cold War. It was a Sverdlov-class light cruiser, part of the Soviet Union's Northern Fleet. At the time of its creation back in the early 50s, enemies of Russia were actually terrified of the ship because it was so advanced. Unfortunately for Russia, it ended up being a naval embarrassment. The Murmansk smashed into a Norwegian fjord in the middle of the 1990s and got stranded. And this was after 40 years of service in which the Murmansk didn't really accomplish much at all. By the time it crashed on December 24, 1994, it had already been labeled obsolete. In fact, it had been sold as scrap metal to India. It was during the transfer that the old cruiser broke free of the tow rope, ran aground, and then half sank. The ship sat there abandoned for over a decade until 2012, when the dismantling started. A demolition contractor from Scandinavia, AFDCom, had to build an enormous seawall around the shipwreck just so that they could dismantle it from land. By 2013, every last piece of the failed Soviet cruiser was taken away. Number 3. German torpedo ship. The lost wreckage of a missing German torpedo ship was recently discovered inside of a sea cave. Oddly enough, Darren Murray, a professional explorer, was looking for 2 different wrecks when he stumbled upon the torpedo ship. It originally sank in December of 1920 off the coast of Roundham Head in the United Kingdom. Darren found the creepy wreckage of the vessel inside a cave that can only be accessed from the ocean beneath the cliff bluffs. It's not exactly a place frequented by ordinary people. In fact, the wreckage has been hiding inside of the sea cave for at least 100 years. But how did the ship get into the cave in the first place? The vessel fought during World War I and survived, only to be captured by the British. It was while a British ship was towing the German destroyer along with another German vessel that it encountered a storm and the destroyer got lost. Nobody knew what happened, and to be honest, the British weren't too concerned. Number 2. The Beaumont. Archaeologists working in Antigua believe they've discovered the shipwreck of a French war vessel from the 18th century that was used by some of the original American colonists during the American Revolutionary War. The ship is called the Beaumont, constructed in 1762. Archaeologists found it, at least what they believe to be the Beaumont, at the bottom of Tank Bay, just 8 feet, 2.4 meters beneath the surface. The wreckage was found thanks to a diver named Maurice Belgrave, who told officials that he saw the large ribs of a ship somewhere at the bottom of the bay. From what experts can tell, the ship matches the Beaumont exactly. It's 130 feet, 39 meters long, and clearly an 18th century French vessel. The history of the Beaumont is actually quite fascinating. It only served the French military for 2 years before it was sold to an unknown individual who renamed it the Lion. The ship was eventually handed over to British colonists during the American Revolution, but was then captured off the coast of what is today Virginia by a British naval ship. What happened after that is a little foggy. It was brought to a dockyard in Antigua, which was controlled by the British, but there are no historical records of it after that. Nobody knows how it sank, though it may have been damaged during an unknown sea battle and just kind of abandoned. Number 1. Nazi warship. When divers discovered a World War II shipwreck, they were hoping to find some sunken treasure. At first, researchers believed the German steamship called the Karlsruhe, which sank back in 1945 near the coast of Poland, could contain treasures from the legendary Amber Room. When the wreckage was found just a little while ago, divers uncovered mysterious crates that they believed could contain valuable items. They also found rotting canvases, suggesting the ship had once contained valuable pieces of artwork. But just what exactly is the Amber Room, and why is it so important? The Amber Room was a literal room filled with some of the most precious treasure in Europe. It was built in 18th century Prussia in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, Russia. The room contained millions and millions of dollars worth of treasure, jewels, and famous works of art. The Nazis raided this room, stole every last piece of treasure they could get their hands on, and brought it back to Germany. But by the time the war was over, all the treasure had vanished. To this day, nobody knows exactly where the Nazis shipped the treasure or where they stashed it. This is why the discovery of the shipwreck was so exciting. When it left port, it had 360 tons of goods on board. The underwater archaeologists thought the Nazis had loaded the ship with the precious treasure from the Amber Room, only for the boat to sink. But as they learned after sifting through the wreckage in 2020, there was nothing in it except old war memorabilia. All those mysterious crates? Well, they only contained ordinary army gear, things like binoculars, gas masks, and other miscellaneous objects. There's still no sign of the missing treasure. Which of these creepy lost vessels is your favorite? Let us know in the comments, and thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe and come back again for more awesome videos right here on American Eye.